Team Museum Copyrights Interim Progress Report video. So what is our information issue? We distilled it down to a simple question. When can museums use images they do not own in educational exhibits for the public in the United States? We broke this down into 4 basic subtopics. Are reproductions of public domain artwork even copyrightable, or are they simply copies of something that's already owned by the public? When does fair use apply when we are using owned images in a public display? What are the moral responsibilities of museums to these creators and right owners, and do they have moral obligations beyond what is purely legal? And finally, what should the best practice policy be for museums and institutions in general? What units do we plan to study? Well, we're going to review museum copyright policies and fair use policies in 4 different states. We'll be looking at the Seattle Museum of History and Industry, the Montana Historical Society Museum, the Fort Caspar Museum in Wyoming, and the Museum of Fine Arts in Houston. So why museum copyrights? Museums are extremely important institutions in providing access to information about our cultural heritage. The public relies on them to be able to get access to and see the artistic and cultural works of their own society. Copyright and fair use laws are critical concepts for almost any information professional, regardless of the setting that we plan on working in. We will always be exposed to issues of intellectual property and ownership. We wanted to learn how to create these ethical copyright policies by reviewing and examining existing policies used by institutions today. And, who doesn't want to read 366 pages of copyright law? Who are the major stakeholders in this issue? Well, the original artists are clearly a stakeholder in that the creative rights to their own works are at stake here. But they may not own the works anymore. They may have assigned them to someone else or sold the copyright for it. So rights owners come into play. In many cases, the museums are the rights owners themselves. Then there are the rights of the documentary photographers. So many of these images are images taken of other people's works, and the photographers themselves are merely trying to make as close a copy of the original artwork as possible. The curators who create these exhibits have a major stake into what they need to know when they can use images and when they can't. The museum institutions are stakeholders in that they have financial liabilities and a duty to the public to provide access to cultural heritage. The legal establishment creates complex laws and regulations that manage copyright in public institutions. And finally, the public has a right to access and view their own cultural heritage. How is that balanced against the owner's rights to their own cultural works? So what is our research plan? Well, first we're going to do a literature review. We're going to pull articles on the copyright issues in museums and cultural institutions. And we're also going to review articles on the ethical considerations involved in using creative works. The next step is we're going to do a qualitative research mini-study of the 4 museums we've picked and their fair use policies. We'll then code the data that we've collected and analyze it for themes that are contained within those policies and procedures. And from that, we hope to find common ground and or important factors to base our recommendations and potential changes in the law. So what are our individual roles in doing this work? Well, I'm going to be the project manager, the videographer in creating videos, and the faculty liaison. Martha will draft our initial literature review from the summaries that each of us have written and provided her. She will also operate as the editor-in-chief in that she will do the final editorial draft of everything that we turn in and approve it before we turn it in. Sarah will draft the initial report that's due in November, and Sammy will draft the final report. Every one of us will do research in each of our museums, and every one of us will review the work before it's turned in. So what tasks do we have to do? Well, everyone will read and summarize assigned articles. We'll each contact a museum, and everyone will interview or review the policies provided by that. Everyone will code and analyze those and put our data into a software product called Deduce, where we can see trends and themes. Finally, we're going to recommend best practices from those trends and themes by having a conference call where we review our final findings. We've already finished our reading and writing the summaries of our assigned articles for the literature review. In addition, we've all contacted and got the agreement of a museum to participate. So what are the challenges? Based on our literature review, we already believe that understanding copyright laws is going to be complex. They tend to be dense and vague documents that are impenetrable, and very few people, even the courts, seem to be able to consistently interpret. Second, we've already found that it's difficult to get straight answers from institutions about copyright. They're very hesitant to tell you how and when they apply copyright laws. So we think that it's going to be difficult to make recommendations in an environment where we can balance the stakeholders' concerns while people are afraid of getting sued for infringement. How do we plan to have fun? Well, our weekly project meetings are already fun. We get a chance to talk and even complain about our various classes. We all get to spend time in museums, and each of us loves spending time in museums or we wouldn't have picked the topic in the first place. Finally, we get to read 366 pages of poorly written copyright jurisprudence. And who doesn't like to do that? So what can you do to help us? Well, timely feedback is always helpful when we turn in our assignments. And clearly there will be times when we need clarification of how assignment works or what your expectations are. I hope this helped you understand what Team Museum is in this interim progress report.